Welcome to the 5% Club with your hosts Maria Mejia and David Pataki as they dig deep into what it takes to start, grow, and take your business to new levels. They do this by demystifying common mistakes, roadblocks, and pitfalls by handing you strategies, tips, and hacks. Get your pen and paper ready because here they are.
Welcome back to another episode. My name is Maria Mejia, your imported accountant.
And I am David Pataki, your Panastic business coach. I know she came up with the Panastic thing, but I don't know.
Well, it's there for life now.
Well, the imported accountant makes a lot more sense. You know, it's actually more. Wow.
You should have seen that hesitation there.
The imported accountant is better.
It's better suited for me.
No, it's more beneficial because she can do the taxes in 2 different countries. Anyways.
Well, if you want to smile, just talk to David for a little bit and you'll definitely smile through his puns.
Well, either it'll be a pun or it'll be some silly thing that I can't even get out of my mouth properly. But anyways, what is our topic for today, Maria?
So today I kind of want to talk about running and starting your business on a shoestring budget. So, you know, David and I have both started businesses from the ground up, and so we have that experience of not being a Kardashian and not having billions of dollars from mommy or daddy to run our businesses. And so I personally had to, take out some money from my the family savings account after the conversation and approval of my spouse, of course. And so, David, why don't you tell us some of your experience of starting a business with a shoestring budget?
Right. Well, this is a great time in history to start businesses. COVID has definitely shook a bunch of things up. Some people have been eliminated in their jobs, or they're not quite satisfied. So they've got a business idea that they've been running around in their head for a little while. This is episode 3, so we're actually building on what it's like to start a business. We touched on some of the foundations in the last couple of episodes. But this one we want to talk about how you can start up on a budget, on a shoestring budget. One of the things you could do, as Maria said, and if at all possible, if you've got a little bit of a runway, when you know that you're going to launch in 6 weeks or 6 months, put aside as much of savings as you can towards that. But there's many things that we can do in the meantime when you're ready to start. Now, if it's a product-based business, that's definitely a lot of different things to consider versus a service-based business. But of course, depending on the service-based business, you may have to buy equipment or special tools and so on. So there's definitely different things that you have to consider. But definitely, the best way is to be as creative as possible. And what I mean by that is, take a look at what the business is that you want to start. And you look around, you've already done your homework, you know what the competition is doing. You know what they're charging. You've kind of got all that figured out. Then you go, well, what can I do differently, or how can I deliver this differently on a budget? And if it's a product, let's say it's clothing, for example, you want to get into fashion, and you're able to bring in a certain kind of clothing line in. A great way to do it is if you could do an e-commerce site. There's different levels of doing the e-commerce site. You can pay someone to do it, of course. There goes all your budget there. There's Etsy, there's Shopify, there's other types of sort of pre-set up e-commerce sites, or you can get yourself, a Wix or a Squarespace.
Squarespace, yeah.
Website. You get that set up, and you can do e-commerce on there as well. And that's a great way to get it going at a low cost. But then it comes to the inventory. Like economies of scale would say that if you buy in bulk, that each item will be cheaper per item overall. But the problem with that is it's a much bigger investment in the beginning. So what you can do is you could sort of drop ship. If you can make arrangements with your vendor saying, look, I'm going to have e-commerce, I'm going to buy from you, order from you, and you ship from your location directly to your customer. Got to make sure that it's sort of a blind ship, or if they're able to put your labels on it, or that type of stuff. That is one way that you can do the e-commerce site. But one thing that you definitely want to don't do is you don't want to go out there and sign a lease on any kind of storefront or anything like that, because you don't even, if you don't have any sales, you're not even ready to pay the rent, and you don't want to spend all your budget on a rent and a space where you don't even know if you're going to be able to make it work.
Definitely. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to potentially signing a lease is, what is the foot traffic, Is the lease in one location better than another because, your services or your products are better for people who just walk in, window shop? Or are you just someone who needs a space to do their work, and then, you ship your things out elsewhere, so you don't need that foot traffic? So understanding, the demographic of the area where you might potentially lease from is very important.
Right, and if you do find that a retail space is something that you definitely need to have, then this goes back to being creative. Is there an already established retailer that you can either rent a certain space from them, or you can set up sort of a consignment or a commission-based process there where, when you sell the product, they get a piece of the action. But that way you're keeping your overhead down. Right, and clearly you want to make sure that if you're selling clothes, that you're not going to go into a bakery and throw up a closet in one corner of the store. You have to make sure that it's somewhat a similar business that will be targeting similar prospects that you're after.
Yep, that kind of reminds me of it's a little like cookie. So she bakes little cookies. And there's a little it wasn't really a farmer's market, but it's like a little farm store that's locally owned. And so she kind of partnered with them where the farm store would buy X amount of cookies from her, but she's able to set up a little table there and still represent herself, but the farmer's store would be the ones receiving the money at the end of that day, kind of thing. So having some kind of partnership with them, whether that be written where they purchase and then they receive the sales amount, or where you pay to rent that little space.
Right, and another, to build on that, whether it's a farmer's market, depending on what time of year it is, but another thing to consider, if the product is unique enough that you could consider doing a pop-up location, whether it's outside or whether you can find a vacant space and negotiate with the landlord to see if you can do it for a few weeks or for a month. But that way you put a lot of marketing effort into it and kind of jumpstart. You can find it's a way to do a short-term lease and get a gauge on how well your product will be received in the market. Now, if it's a service-based business, you don't have to worry so much about location, but then you might have to worry about, do I need special equipment? Do I need special tools? Or clothing, for example, like depending on what it is. Do you need to get work boots and spend a chunk of change on clothes like that? Or if it's a handyman service, are you going to go out there and buy, $5,000 worth of power tools? So what you can consider is, well, what can I get secondhand? You can look on Facebook and Kijiji. You can look at, the pawn shops, that type of stuff. Facebook Marketplace. There's lots of ways to look around, or even just ask people, ask friends. Just put a request online in search of this. So you need to be, use that word frugal. But frugal, smart, and creative again, right? Like you want to make sure that you look at the big picture and you go, okay, yes, I would love that brand new Milwaukee saw and drill and impact set and the table saw. Oh, you know what? Oh, and I'm going to need a trailer to move that all around in. And all of a sudden you look at and you've got a $15,000 bill and you haven't done, a single sale. So what could you do differently? Yes, use the vehicle you've got to begin with. You could even rent specific equipment if it's a larger ticket item. If you need it for a day or half a day, there are rental shops where you can rent it for just for that period of time. Or you look at buying it secondhand.
Yeah, you can also look, depending on what kind of services you give, whether that be like decal or any other type of print or maybe 3D printing. Your local library or any other local shops might have that material or that equipment already and might have that option to rent out the equipment for a certain amount of time. I know here in our town, they have kind of this little, what they call a tinker shop, where they have a bunch of different types of equipments that people can rent out for a couple hours to use in their own businesses. And they don't charge like a ridiculously large fee, as if you have to pay for your own kind of equipment. So, look around. There might be an option for that in your community or even maybe in the next town over.
Right, yep. They're either, what's it called, creative labs, or there's even make it labs throughout a lot of the fairly decent sized towns, and definitely cities would have that. A great option there, Maria, to look at doing that. And what's great about that scenario is that typically there's other people there that you could either talk to, collaborate with, and learn from.
Yeah, they might have some, especially if you're very new at using the equipment, they might have tips like, hey, careful, maybe this machine kind of acts up after X amount of units being made, so give it a good kick and it will start working for you again. Another thing...
Whoa, just don't kick it too hard, though.
Yeah, don't break it, or else you'll have to pay for a new one. Another thing to keep in mind, whether to buy a new equipment or not, is the option of either buying the equipment outright or potentially leasing a new or used equipment as well, because sometimes that could be less expense, and it would be an expense spread throughout the use of the product or the equipment.
Right, and people may not know that, but you can actually get leasing for used equipment. As long as there's value to it, clearly it wouldn't make much sense to lease a $1,000 winter beater car, but if there's enough value in there left in the product or the asset, it's definitely considered leasing, especially if it's used and it's startup.
Just do it. I'm just kidding.
Just do it?
Just do it.
Uh-oh, there's a copyright infringement. Sorry, Nike.
There's a lot of things to take into consideration, and it can become overwhelming. But, talk to other people who have started their business either in the same field or a similar field, and potentially collaborate with them. As we were talking about, maybe in your little tinker shop, you come in contact with someone who's already kind of in their own business that's the same as you. Look for other opportunities, either people in your same field or maybe adjacent fields that might be able to give you some help, some wisdom. Maybe they know some people, so having that network opportunities is very helpful.
Right, and then we've talked about joint venture partners in the past, and here's an excellent opportunity. If you could find someone that complements your product or service right away, and they don't actually offer that product or service, then right away, if they're established, you've got yourself a ready partner that can bring in revenue right off the bat.
That's helpful.
It's very helpful, and the thing with being on a shoestring budget, that's where the numbers become, watching your numbers, tracking it, common sizing, all the fun stuff that Maria always talks about. So do you want to just elaborate a bit there on what are the key things you should be watching for when you're on the budget?
Yeah. So just to start out with, especially if you're on a shoestring budget, you don't have to go out and buy $1,000, high-end accounting, bookkeeping, tracking type software. There's lots of free software out there that you can use especially if you have inventory that you need to track. Try and find one of the cheaper ones, but also that that give you the reports that you want. So what you'd be wanting, so if you're a product-based business, what you want to be keeping track of is how much inventory are you moving around, and do you have inventory that's kind of just sitting either in your warehouse or in that spare room in your house? Like, how long is it sitting there?
That is the warehouse.
Spare room is the warehouse. How long is it sitting there? Are you able to sell the same amount or more of what you're having being shipped in, or is it just sitting there for months on end? If you're a service-based business, are you charging enough for the time that you are spending on those services? If you're just charging $20 and you're spending 50 hours on it, is that the best use of your time? Are you charging enough your value, which we'll be talking about in a later podcast? We'll kind of deep dive on that a bit more. But are you charging enough for that kind of thing? And then are you...
Well, I want to jump in there for a second there. When you're talking about what you're going to charge per hour, even if it's a service-based, you have to think about, okay, your cost, your time is something, but you also have to cover other costs, which is potentially marketing, your website, your phone, your gas,
your equipment,
your computer, or whatever it is that you have it, if it's a landscaping business, all of that. So you have to factor, it's not just your time. What I find a lot of entrepreneurs say is, oh, you know what, I did that. It took me 3 hours to do it and I only charged $50. It was only my time. And that's the wrong mentality, because when you fall into that, you're devaluing yourself, and it's hard to get the right mindset so that the next time you fall back into that same trap. So what you got to do is figure out what your hard costs are, figure out what your time is worth, and try your best to stay at that number. If that number ends up being $50 an hour or $75 an hour or $100 an hour, whatever that is, you got to do your best to stick to your guns to make sure you do that. Because as soon as you lower that hourly rate, you're eating straight into your profit. And if you don't have any profits, then your business is not going to succeed.
So, it becomes very important to track all those little expenses. So how much are you paying for internet? How much, obviously, if you need a computer, how much did you pay for that computer before you started your business? And all these other things. If you have a home-based business, how much are you paying for your electricity, your hydro, and your mortgage? Those stuff can be claimed on your tax return at the end of the year. So it's good to keep track of that. And then to have also factor that into, the price of your service or your product.
And remember, if this is a business that's not just a side hustle, and you want to either replace your current income or you want to be able to earn more than you are at your current job, then putting on that business owner's hat and looking at working on the business right from the beginning is a hack that you need to think about right now. Don't think about it, it's a passion thing. Again, it depends on what you want to do. If all you want to do is have a little bit of fun with it, earn a little bit of extra cash on the side, then you just go ahead and have fun with it. But if you legitimately want this to be a profitable business that can earn you decent revenue, it's best to start off right at the beginning. We talked about with the foundational stuff. Start tracking your numbers, start tracking your costs so that you know what your profit margin is. In the beginning, finding out what that is sort of a standard. You find the baseline, and then you look at what can I do to improve that profit margin. Because at the end of the day, if you're at a 30% profit margin, for every dollar that you earn through revenue, there's only 30 cents of that's profit. And what a lot of small business owners, especially in the beginning, they kind of forget is that they get paid $200 for whatever it is, and they go, oh, woohoo, I got $200, I'm going to go spend it. But what did it cost in real costs to produce that product or service for $200? And if you're looking at a 30% profit margin, then only $60 of that $200 is actually profit.
So figure out how much things are going to cost you, keep track of it, and price accordingly.
Yeah, well, I know especially when you're starting out, you devalue your time and all that kind of stuff. And what typically happens is that whatever price you're charging for the product or service, you're going, I'm happy if I just break even. But the problem is that it is very, very difficult to increase the prices after you get going with a client. So if you're charging a client $200 for the service, and at the end of the day or at the end of the month or 2 months down the road, you realize I'm only making $20 every time I do that service for that person, then you go, well, I need to charge $260 so I can have a $70 profit on that. And they're going to go, whoa, wait a minute. You told me it was $200. I mean, some are okay if you explain to them that you're new at this.
The value added.
Then you can look at value add. But I mean, typically people get going on a product or a service in the beginning and they undervalue what it is. And it's very difficult to go up, but it's much easier to go down. So if you want to sort of, especially in the beginning, you're kind of almost guessing a little bit based on, you can kind of figure out what your costs are, but it's better to estimate high and lower your price if you need to.
For sure. And if you don't know or you don't have any experiences, consult with a professional. There are many professionals who are experienced or they specialize in whatever field that you decide to go into. Ask them, like, am I charging enough? Should I be tracking different expenses? Should I be going for this loan? Should I buy this equipment? Talk to them. Whether that be an accountant or a business coach, ask them those questions. I had a client come to me recently. They're like, oh, I just purchased this truck. Should I put it under my own personal name or my business name? We had a discussion about like what was the use of the truck. Are you just going to be using it for your business and transportation of specifically business products? And I'm like, just put it in your business name. That way you can write off everything. It's a bit less tracking that you have to do, a less stress on you in the long run. So consult with a professional. That's my point there.
Yeah, there's always help out there if you need it. We're doing our best with our podcast here and our Facebook Lives to get as much information out as possible. But you can always reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any question.
Yep, we are here for the small business and the new business startups. Even if if you just came from being an employee and you're like, okay, I want to start my own business, we're here for those types of people as well. We're here for you. And we hope that this podcast and everything else that we're on is helping you. And remember, as I always say in each episode, write something down. Once you have something written down, welcome to the 5% Club.
5% Club. 5% Club.
There we go. There's my echo. Yes. I've been missing it.
Well, see, that's one of our budget things here, so that we could do this podcast, and we are not ready to invest in any kind of special effects. So that's me. Sorry.
Now I see why he's fantastic.
Sorry.
So, like, subscribe, rate us. We're on just about every podcasting platform there is, or
share us.
Share us.
Did you say share us? Recommend us.
Let the whole world know, and
I like that. Let the whole world know. Starting about one person at a time.
One person at a time. And if you have any questions or any topics that you want us to cover, send us a message. Drop that in the comments section, and we will definitely talk about it and highlight it in following podcast episodes.
All right. So for the imported accountant, and I'm the Panastic business coach. Until next time.
Have a good one.